Oh, okay. I think we may be live at this point.
Are we live?
Yeah, I think we're live at this point,
Excellent.
Sam Musa. So this is
Excellent.
Pip Stellick and Sam Musa on the wealth debate.
The wealth
And
debate.
it looks like we're live on Facebook right now. And
Excellent.
so we are coming to you for the second week in a row. We were on last Wednesday, and we're going to try to do this every week. That's our goal. Obviously, there's always going to be things that happen. We thought we were going to be on Wednesdays every week for about 30 minutes, and then we've got other challenges on tomorrow night's schedule, so we came in on Tuesday. And so one of the things that we did on the last debate is we actually took a couple of questions or got some questions. And if you guys know Sam and I whatsoever, he talks more than I do, which is an amazing feat. And I will try to answer some questions as you bring them through in the comment section. And we are going to actually start the debate with the last question that we got on last week's time frame. And the question that we got, and so I told the person we would answer it this week, was Sam made a comment. And the comment that he made was that in a real estate deal, the real estate is not even the most exciting part. So Sam, if you could elaborate on that, say
Sure.
hello, let everybody know how you're doing tonight.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So Pip, if you remember, we were just going to talk a little bit about some headlines going on, and we'll definitely get in that question. So I'm sure everybody is hearing different information or headlines about COVID and what's going on, and the concern of Christmas and the impact of that. A lot of places have in Canada have we have a code, a different kind of color to represent where we are. Red is when we restrict the highest restriction. Yep.
Can I stop you for just saying,
Sure.
is your shirt an indication of the different color codes that are going on in Canada right now? I didn't know. I just thought maybe you were actually mirroring the different codes and all
Well,
that kind
funny
of
you
stuff.
said that, because red is where we are right now, and red is we restrict to basically 5 people in groups of 5 now. Restrictions in restaurants have been reduced. Even at your home, they're telling us that we should do Christmas specifically with the people at our household. But there's some regions that are shifting to a gray, and a gray, believe it or not, yeah, a gray, believe it or not, is a shutdown again, right? Now, nobody wants a shutdown, but they're getting very close to this level because of the current concern. This is all with the COVID vaccine being launched a lot of different places around the world. UK's been running it. This is week 2 for them. The United States FDA just approved their vaccine, and the distribution of that coming out in Canada the same earlier than that. So we're seeing levels of COVID rise rapidly because people are out there shopping and stuff and getting together, and there's a deep concern that that's going to go rapidly accelerating through the holidays. On the other hand, we have the vaccine, and that's starting to administer to the population, which is going to take a great deal of time. Experts believe it could take anywhere from 1 to 2 years or longer even to get the whole population, not to speak of the probability that this is going to be a reoccurring type of challenge, some form of it for ongoing for the rest for the rest of the future, or near future at least, until they figure it out. Yeah, Pep?
Well, I just wanted to add and make sure everybody knows, if you're on the chat, or if you're watching right now, if you want to chat in, if nothing else, just say hello. Sam and I are creatures of interaction, and
Yes.
our energy level is based on the interaction that we're getting. And so please say hello. I see Wendy just said hello to me. So anybody else, jump in there, say hello. Any questions you got, any comments? If you want to make a comment about Sam's sweater, I already have. So you might as well too. So make sure you are saying stuff in there. Is this your sister? Is your sister named Inam? Am I saying that
Yes.
right?
Yes, Ina. Yeah, no.
Enam, very cool. Enam, I'm Pip. Nice to meet you. And I already can tell you're way cooler than your brother. So that's awesome. So
Yeah, that's good.
Sam, why is the real estate not the most important part or the most exciting part of the property?
I was gonna. We'll do headlines later if we have time. But let's talk about what we really, the big question is why real estate's the least exciting part of a real estate deal. So, one of the concepts I'm going to introduce to you, and we'll do this, in the next couple sessions. We'll talk about this. But one of the principles of wealth, one of the laws of wealth, is you can't trap wealth. Okay, you can't trap wealth. Nothing you own can hold its value over time, right? And I'm not going to explain that right now. I'm just going to leave that with you for a moment. We'll talk about that later. So let's talk about real estate. So why it's the least exciting part. So real estate, the property itself, offers the least amount of opportunity for a real estate investor, or at least the way we approach investing. And the reason is when you purchase the home, or acquire the investment property, what you're really counting on is appreciation, right? So you're a slave basically to the economy, right? And what's happening around it. And if the economy is good, great, you'll see an appreciation. If not, you'll see a flat or go down. Okay. So and obviously we couple that with the reality of you know the money supply and stuff causing the market to go up and down, employment, all these things happening to the property. But ultimately, your property is going to produce in the United States and Canada very similar, roughly around 1% return appreciation over time. Okay, so the longer you hold a property, the less likely you're going to make real money on appreciation. Now there is a method. Actually, I learned from Pip about how to take advantage of appreciation. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more tonight. If not, we'll get it on the next one. But for the most part, you're looking at 1% appreciation. We talked a little bit about this on our last call. Our last show was because you have to pay taxes, maintenance, insurance. These things are paid no matter what. So you don't get that money back. You need to pay them. That's the price of ownership. Just to own the house, you have to pay these things. And then there's the backbreaker often, which is inflation. So all those reasons give us about a 1% return. So when we invest in property, we're really not investing in the property per se. We're controlling a property, but what we really get excited about is the money. And let me explain why. See, property allows us to do something that's very cool that we learned from the banks, and that's to create a larger return from a smaller investment, controlling a value, high value asset. Okay, so a high value asset would be the property, say at 500,000. I control it for say 50,000, and because I can control this asset at such a small amount, which property does, right? Because it's very secure for in most people's eyes. So as an asset class, we love that you only need a little bit of money to control this large asset. What's cool for us is because we put a small amount of money, right, and the way we structure our financing, it's going to produce a high return. Not just a high return, an extraordinarily high return relative to if you bought the property and you paid cash. In fact, when you pay cash for a property, you make the least amount of return. So for us, we love opportunities, and it could be business or the market or real estate in this case, that allows us to take small amounts of money, if possible, no money, to control an asset and to get an infinite or very high return without, here's the catch here, without changing the risk. Okay. In fact, by leveraging it, we reduce our risk. So without touching the property, without changing risk, right, and actually reducing risk, we actually produce a higher return. So we don't have to fix the property up. We don't have to raise the rent. We don't have to add an addition to the property. And we can actually increase our return exponentially because of the way we use money. So the exciting part for us when we talk about real estate is how do we use the money the best way to control this asset to produce a high return of income, right? Ultimately, though, I don't want to take it away because ultimately there is still an opportunity of capital gains. I don't know if I'd say ultimately was the best phrasing about that. There is that opportunity, right? But the real money in real estate is not owning it, it's controlling it and putting the least amount of capital in it. The more money you put in property, the less likely, my apology, more money you put in property, the lower the return, and the longer you hold property, the less likely you'll make money on appreciation. So it's not the property that's exciting to us at all, really. It's the ability to do what the banks do, and that's leverage, high return, low risk. So that's why real estate's on the bottom of the list. It's really about money and money flow for us, the way we invest. It's very exciting. I wish, and we could spend days on it. Creative financing is the most exciting thing to talk about when it comes to investing, in my view. Definitely one of the top, and we will definitely talk about that on further shows. So, Pip, you want to add or?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't even know what the old saying is, and it was back in the BC days, and is it Archimedes? Archimedes? I don't know how you say the name, but he had a quote that basically said, if you give him a big enough lever and a place to stand, he can move the world.
That's right.
And so, and I know I can see the name. I don't know how to pronounce it. Archmides or something like that.
Yeah. He was Greek.
It's obviously a very smart man. And really what it comes down to, I think, is that when we look at leverage, and that's why the financing side of it, more so than the house itself, because the house is going to go into a situation where you have to repair it. It's going to need a new roof at some point. It's going to need all the stuff. As Sam was saying, you got to pay taxes and all those things on it. So the house is not as nearly as exciting as the actual leverage. Or if I have any UK people on here, sometimes we draw people from all over the world when I do these Facebook Lives, which blows me away. And they pronounce things different. They don't call it a lever, they call it a lever, but it means the same thing. And that if you can really learn the leverage side of property, which I mean, and you can leverage stocks, there's no doubt about it, with margin accounts and things like that.
Options, yep.
But property really allows you the easiest way to leverage, because the average homeowner, you don't have to know anything about real estate, and you can go out and get a mortgage. You can put anywhere from 5 to whatever % down on a property, and the rest of it you're leveraging, because the bank knows that property is over time a very solid investment. When you look at margin accounts and options on stock, the risk goes up quite a bit. And there's a lot more unknowns. Whereas with real estate, you have a lot more steadiness and it's a lot more stable asset. So the question that was asked last week was, why is the real estate the least exciting part? It's because technically the most exciting part is going to be the leverage part of the financing side.
Yeah, and then the property itself, remember the property itself is, you need quite a bit to just own it. You need to take care of the taxes, the maintenance, the insurance, and you're subject to the economy and obviously inflation. So there's a lot you have to be willing to do to own a property, which is fine for us. We're okay with that. What we're not okay is just depending on capital appreciation to make money, because in our view, property itself really doesn't make that much over time. If you start doing the math on it, it's not very exciting in the way of returns. And I want to say something that I think is important to understand. If a company opens up and it says we need to employ people, and we look at the skills that they're asking for, and they basically say no skills needed, everyone can do this job. So if we're applying for this job and we're sitting in that interview, are we going to tell the person sitting across from us we think we deserve $250,000 for a job that anybody can do? That's not going to happen. So something that everybody can do in a job, right? You're going to get minimum wage because anybody can do it. Well, real estate's very similar like that. Because anyone can buy a house, it's almost anyone can buy a property. That's not a skill. That's not a specialized skill. There's nothing special about buying properties. There's nothing at all special about. But taking a property and extracting profit from it, this is exciting. And to do that, you need to understand money, not necessarily property. Because what you'll find, and this is so cool, is you can apply those same money principles to anything. Business, stock market, investing, anything, and it's always going to give you an edge and a higher return than if you just look at the asset itself and said, I'm just going to focus on that asset. So learning financial education, learning about money and understanding how money is used to grow more money, that's super exciting, because you realize something, which is another principle of wealth. All wealth is created. Very exciting. All wealth is created. We will talk about that on one of the other shows. We won't have time, but that's another law of the principle of wealth, is all wealth is created. And I'll tell you, when you wake up in the morning, you realize that, you're excited. You're excited because no one can stop you from achieving your dreams and what you want. So that to me is a little something that gets me up in the morning. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to and I didn't mean to interrupt you earlier. You were kind of talking about headlines and different things and stuff with COVID. And I just wanted to make sure everybody that was coming on said hello. And I know I interrupted you. If you want to finish that thought, Sam, I know you were talking about some stuff with, what's going on in the world today with all the issues.
Yeah. So right now in the U.S., they're still trying to, and COVID's going to be the major headline here because it does have an implication deep into our economy. So they're still trying to resolve a package, to agree on a package, some COVID relief for the American people. And they're looking at somewhere around 700 billion reported by CNBC as a package that they're putting together to infuse into the market. And obviously that 700 billion, it turns into a lot more, right? It creates a lot more liquidity in the market and money flow. But what you're starting to see in those headlines is Americans, this is right out of CNBC's last article there, that they were talking about this situation. Americans scrambling to find a meal and pay their rent. That's how serious in some areas it is, because they need that capital, that infusion of capital, because there's still some challenges with the overall economy and jobs, and unemployment is still relatively high to historically. It's just crazy. Same in Canada. Employment rate, unemployment rate is not where we want it to be, and it's going to be interesting to see how this affects this season, and how long it's going to take for the market to recover. And this is a deep impact, obviously, in real estate, because it's really geared to the economy, the growth of the economy, the GDP. And if we don't get that, there's going to be some serious issues. So I anticipate, there will be a deal even before the end of the year. I know the time's running out, but I think that needs to happen for the American people. And that they would be quite upset if that did not happen. Could put a damper on the economy. The retail selling of products and stuff like that. I think people will start to get nervous. So hopefully that'll be resolved. But definitely, there's still a huge challenge and a huge gap in the money supply in the U.S. We're waiting for Congress to reasonably find a deal that works with the two leaders of the opposing parties, Republicans and Democrats. Anyways, yeah. Go ahead, Pip. You can speak to that.
I said we have no opposition of politics here in the U.S.
No.
Everybody's friendly. It's all good. No, I've got a Canadian, and we want to talk American politics. No, we don't want to do that. But the thing that I want to add to that is, and you never want to say this in a callous or a way that sounds bad, but when you have any economic, political, whatever turmoil in the world or in a country, there's going to be opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And for the educated investor, you have to know what to look for and what to avoid. And there are going to be certain things. I think there are going to be certain sectors that are going to be very hard hit and probably long-term to ever recover. There's going to be certain cities they're going to take a while to recover. I'll give you a couple of opinions. First of all, and these are opinions, and we all know everybody's got an opinion. So, but the opinion being is that with the fact that we have learned how to work from home, that we probably won't need to have quite the commercial office space that we once had or needed. I thought it was interesting. My daughter and I were driving in the car yesterday or the day before, and my daughter is 15, and she says to me, she says, "Dad, we'll never have another snow day as long as I know."
Right.
And I looked at her and I go, "What do you mean you're never having a snow day?" She goes, "Well, we already go. They're going remotely every other day kind of thing. So why would they ever need to cancel school if we can do it remotely?" And so it's the same thing with work or jobs. There's no reason to have a office where X amount of people come every day if we can work from home. And so there's going to be that's an opportunity, with office space and things like that, meaning you got to be careful of those kinds of assets, I think, because of the COVID. The other thing, and this is interesting, and I guess I'm probably more positive than maybe a lot of people would be. There's a lot of people, I'll give New York City as an example, moving from New York City because it's very expensive, it's crowded. When you're talking pandemics, probably not the best health place to live because of just being very crowded, people living on top of each other. I'm talking mostly Manhattan. And so you see a lot of people, and not to mention even taxes and other things like that, a lot of a mass exodus out to places like Florida, Texas, things like that. And so interestingly enough, everybody's like, well, New York's never coming back. Well, they've said that about New York many times. And there's a fascination, there's a allure to New York City that, Tampa or Dallas or Houston does, or Phoenix doesn't. I'm not knocking any of those cities, but
Right.
I think, yeah, if you go back to the early to mid 80s, early 90s, even in New York, the crime rate was so high.
That's right.
They were having all kinds of issues with real estate and things like that at that point. And then they got that under control. And then obviously the city was thriving up until probably the last 6 months or so. And so there's going to be opportunities. It's like anything. They're cyclical and they're going to take some time.
Yeah, and I would add that although commercial real estate is in jeopardy, and I think that's the consensus. I really believe that there's going to be a reinvention of commercial space somehow. Something's going to come up that somehow utilizes that space a different way. We're very inventive and creative as a people, humanity. I think I think we'll be fine. I think it could be scary for a time if you're involved in commercial real estate, but I think there's going to be some real reinvention of how we use space and like how we work at home, and even residential property, and as an investor, how we utilize that. So without question, Pip's right. Echoing that point about those who understand it are going to capitalize on it. In fact, and we won't talk about it now, and maybe as we get to know each other better, we'll talk about businesses that Pip, actually, he mentioned there's businesses out there that Pip and I are in our group actually are pursuing, because we know the history of these businesses. We know which businesses should thrive in this opportunity, and which businesses have been beat up too much and actually are going to recover rapidly. And we're seeking out those businesses, those opportunities. We really think that it's a wonderful time to be an investor, a wonderful time to get involved in investing. So it's really about surrounding yourself with the right people, understanding obviously the risks that you take when you get involved. And we're big believers that the risk is rooted in the individual. If you don't understand what you're doing, then it's risky, right? If you do understand what you're doing, then you can definitely reduce and manage that risk. And we recognize that we buy and sell risk. That's what we do. We buy and sell risk. We invest in risk, but we understand that risk, and we ask for a higher return than the risk warrants. That's what we look for in opportunities. So it's really exciting, and I think you should be excited. I think you really should get excited about learning how the opportunities exist in this environment, because sadly, it's going to happen again. Something else is going to come up. It's going to happen in a decade or 2 decades, or maybe 3 decades. Who knows? Maybe it's your children that will see it. But to be able to understand it better, and have your even children understand it better, for them to make that opportunity and create their own wealth. We deeply believe in creating your own wealth, and I wish I could share that experience. When you realize you can create wealth from nothing, what's stopping you? I mean, really, what's stopping you? It's amazing what you can do when you know what you're doing. So I really would love to. I mean, we got 6 minutes to talk about how to create wealth and talk about, that you can't trump the. So there's 5+1 principles of wealth that we like to talk about. I won't be able to get into them too deeply, but I can give it to you if you'd like. I'll share them with you, and we'll talk about it on further shows, Pip. You'll hear us discuss it and debate it and talk about it. So first principle of wealth, or law of wealth, is all wealth is created. So all wealth in the world is created. It's a human idea. It was invented by people. Squirrels and bees do not, squirrels don't hide extra nuts so they can sell them at the market. Bees don't make extra honey. Animals don't believe in the concept of wealth. That's not how they live. And we recently started believing wealth, just because for many centuries, we lived basically hand to mouth. That was it. But since we started growing and stuff, and wealth was created, just to give you an example of how wealth is created, World Bank reported 1 million, I believe, dollars was the GDP of the world at 1000 AD. Right now, it's way over 70 trillion. So where did the money come from, right? We created it. Second rule is you can't trap wealth. Very interesting. You can't trap wealth. You can't buy something and expect that the value of it will just sustain itself without some sort of participation or continued investment on your part. That one goes a little bit deeper. I wish I could. Like I said, we'll talk about them a little bit later. The third one, and this is the one that most people, have a clear understanding of, or at least a good feeling about that they understand, which is supply and demand determine the value of all things. Supply and demand determine the value of all things. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. So supply and demand determine the value of things, meaning if a lot of people want a small supply, prices go up. If a few people want a supply of a product, and there's lots of it relative to who wants it, prices go down, right? Everybody understand that? So prices go. You've experienced this with gas, with consumables, with food. When things become scarce, prices go up. When there's lots of it, they try to dump it, and the consumption level relative to that, it can't. It's more supply than demand. Prices go down because they're trying to get rid of this product. Now think about that for a second, because if that's true, supply and demand determine the value of all things, then it must be true that all wealth is created. It must be true. Why? Because what was the value of a car before we had cars? What was the value of a computer before we had computers? What was the value of a typewriter before we had typewriters? And what is the value of typewriters now? So typewriters were worthless, or sorry, my apologies. Before typewriters were born or created, there was no value there. Once the typewriter was created, the value was quite high, the demand was high, and then it was made extinct pretty much with computers and other technologies. So its value went from very high to zero. So it went from zero to high to zero again, right? So you can't, you create wealth, but you can't trap it, right? It still went back to zero. There's no intrinsic wealth and value of anything. And supply and demand teaches us that. So if we believe supply and demand is real, right, it can move prices up and down, then we must believe that supply and demand can move something to zero. In other words, nobody wants it. And we must believe that supply and demand, something that's created, can add value to it, okay? We'll get deeper into this as we go along. But very interesting, supply and demand forces us to recognize you can't trap wealth, and you can create wealth from nothing. Last two rules. Number one, these are expansion rules to help expand the economy. This is something that I learned directly from Pip, and being mentored and coached by him. And that is, we must have win-win transactions. We must have win-win transactions. This is an expanding an economy, even your personal economy. You have to have win-win transactions. That one is tough. Because people don't believe that there can be a winner and a winner in a negotiation. So they think there's a loser and a winner, and that's the only way it is. We don't believe that at all. We teach something very different than that, where we show you can both win. The last rule in the expansion is that you must have access to debt in an economy. If you don't have access to debt in a mass economy, macro economy, or even to yourself, if you don't have access to debt, it's extremely difficult to grow wealth. It's very, very slow. If you had to pay cash for a house, there wouldn't be $1 million house, right? Because you don't make enough. It would take lifetimes, which you used to, by the way, before we had banking and modern banking and ways to get money. It would take you several generations to save enough to buy a plot of land. That's why land is seen as so valuable, because it took generations to be able to get it. So when they got it, they held it. But now, anybody can buy a house. Anybody can buy property, land. It's all out there. It's relatively easy for someone to invest in property for personal use with very little money. So debt allows us to take money that's idle, put it into the system to make more money. So somebody who's exceptionally well at this is a bank. Banks buy and sell money. Buy and sell debt. You put money in the bank, you're a depositor, you're a debtor to the bank, right? And then the bank takes that money and they pool it together and they lend it back to you at an interest rate. It's awesome. It's crazy. So you're borrowing your own money with a bit of other people's money. And again, they're selling that debt, right? They bought the debt from you as a depositor, and now they're just selling it. We want to, as investors, definitely better understand how banks work so we can utilize that in assets like real estate and the stock market and business. And one more big one that I think is important. And I don't know if I want to call this a law, but it's definitely important. Real entrepreneurs solve problems. And when you solve problems, you get paid. The bigger the problem, the bigger the paycheck. This is what entrepreneurs know. The bigger the problem, the bigger the paycheck. This is another lesson I learned from Pep, right? You don't deserve to get paid unless you solve a problem. That's what we do in real estate and investing. If you can solve someone's problem, you deserve to get paid. But if you don't expect to get paid. Why would someone pay you for doing nothing? For buying a house. Buying a house is not solving a big enough problem to get paid. Pip, go ahead. You were going to say something?
There's just a couple of things here. I'm going to talk about the problem solving in a second, but
yeah.
Everywhere I go, and I've had the blessing to travel all around the world, and it seems like every city I go to, the biggest, tallest, nicest buildings are always the bank buildings.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if I was in India, if I'm in South Africa, Europe, Australia, it doesn't matter. It's always that way. And it's just because they understand how debt works and they use it at levels that most people can't even imagine. The other thing that I just have to laugh about this. I mean, over the years, growing up in a family business, we had just tons of employees over the years. And I'll say the word, I don't know how to say it better than this, just blessed again to grow up in that environment. And if any of my family ever gets a chance to watch any of these, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And the thing about it is you go into work, and you guys have all heard this any place you work, and your fellow coworkers would complain, or if they're your employees, they would complain that they've got to do this. Oh, so-and-so did this, and so now I've got to do this. This happened, so now I have to do that. Whatever it is. And the mentality should always be, thank goodness that somebody came in and messed up the floor at the grocery store, because now you got a job cleaning it. Because if they didn't mess up the floor, you would have no job. Thus, you wouldn't be able to get paid to create money or to have money to go buy the services and things that you want. So obviously, the bigger problems you solve, as Sam says, the more money you make. Does that mean you have to take bigger risks? Maybe. The more knowledgeable you all are of something, the less risk you're actually taking. You can diminish that risk. You can't eliminate it, but you can mitigate it over time, and especially through experience and using other people's knowledge and other people's past experiences on there. So I think there's a lot of things to be said about both those things that Sam was talking about. And I know, Sam, I'm sure you have more things to say, but before you do that, I do want to, no, you're fine. We'll have a little more time here. Some of you guys are asking about wanting to go deeper into these topics. Please understand, we're going to keep doing this. We would love to see this show grow and reach more people. Please share the video with other people. Let other people know this is going on. And we know this is Facebook, meaning we don't know that people are going to watch it live when we're actually talking. But the nice part about it, you can watch it anytime you want. I mean, this is the true on-demand. Facebook is the true first on-demand service that was out there. You can start watching it whenever you have time. You could binge watch this. Man, you must really be bored if you're binge watching the show that Sam and Pip are doing. That would be just a little bit odd. But nonetheless, we're definitely going to be doing more of these, and we're going to dive into these topics at different levels. And we'll add new topics as we go along here, because the topic of money, it's probably talked about more than anything in the world, other than maybe one other one that we're not going to talk about on this program. And that would be love and money. And that's, we're not going to get the love side of it. Yeah, that's the nicest way I can say that. Yeah. But so I just think there's a lot of opportunities to just have these discussions. And more importantly, they're going to change a little bit over time based on what's going on in the world. I mean, I hope we're not talking about COVID 2 years from now.
Yeah, right.
Chances are we could be talking about some other disease or pandemic that we never even thought about.
Yeah.
So you just never know. I thought it was interesting. And I probably shouldn't be plugging movies, but I'm going to plug a movie here. And I watched it years ago, and now I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's Matt Damon is the star of the movie, and it's about a pandemic. And I'll think of the name. And if somebody knows which one I'm talking about, Gwyneth Paltrow's in it. There's a lot of big name stars. It's one of those. It begins with an I believe is the name of the movie. If anybody's listening and can tell me the name of the movie. In fact, what was interesting, I'd watched it years ago. I think it came out 2011, 2012. And I asked my daughters, I go, and this was back right when the pandemic started. I said, do you want to watch this movie? And it's Contagion. I thought it was an I. Thank you very much, Wendy. If there's an I in it, how about that? And so Contagion is the name of the movie. And whether you like the movie or not, whether you agree with the movie, that's irrelevant. But what's interesting, there were some terms that so I watched the movie again back in April or May with my kids. And what was interesting is I watched the movie for like the second time, and there were things that were said in the movie. And this is so important. And Sam talks about mapping, and your map of the world is different than what the actual
Yeah,
world is.
yeah.
And so what's funny about that is I did not once pay attention in that movie when they used the term social distancing. And
Mm,
back in April, I'd heard the word social distancing hundreds of times every day. No matter where you went, they were talking about social distancing.
yeah.
However, I heard it in the movie 7 or 8 years ago, and yet never even registered with me because it was not in my focus. I was not looking for it. There's an old, I mean, you and I know Sam's probably said this, I've said this a million times. You go to a car dealership, you buy a car, and you think you have a unique color car, a unique type of car, you drive it off the lot, and then you notice there's a lot of other people that have that blue car that you just bought. Where were those cars before? You just weren't focused on it. So it's a lot of it's what you focus on. I know we're getting off on different topics, but we're definitely going to dive into these things a lot differently in a lot different ways over the course of the next number of weeks and months. Go ahead,
Sure.
Sam.
So what we'll do is we'll attack one law per show. We'll talk about it and expand on it, and definitely want to share these things with you. And you know what? We're writing a book about those laws. So when that's done, I'll let everybody know. But we will definitely continue to talk. Very, very important. And really, and those laws are conceptual. Say it for me, Pep.
Conceptual.
Thank you. But at the end of the day, we want to be able to use these concepts and apply them to our life, right? So they're meaningful. We'll talk about how you can apply these principles to your life and how you can move forward in your individual finances within those laws to make money. What's cool about these laws, by the way, is it doesn't matter what it is or when it is. It always lives by these laws. They're as real as the laws of aerodynamics. When you apply the laws of aerodynamics, you fly. When you don't, you're going to crash and burn. And this is the way it is with finances. So we definitely want to be able to fly and soar high with the ability to create wealth. We're going to talk more about that in the later shows. I'm good, Pip. Anything else you want to share?
Well, I just want to let everybody know we'll try to do it next Tuesday or Wednesday evening. We're going to shoot for Wednesdays, I think. That's the goal anyway. So a week from tomorrow, whatever that would be, the 23rd. Yeah, we could do it on the 23rd. We're not quite to the holiday, so it's not the 24th. So it's 23rd. We'll try to be on next on December 23rd. Please, I'm going to say this again. Share this with other people. I think my wife is posting these on my YouTube channel. If she is, good for her, because I wouldn't know how to do it. And so it's always good to be surrounded by people that are smarter than you. So Wednesday next week, a week from tomorrow, probably 8 or 9 o'clock Eastern time, we'll figure that all out. And so I can't think of anything else I need to add other than we will see you next week on the show.
See you next week on the show, and make sure you tell a friend. Have a great week.
Have a good one, guys. Adios. Talk soon.